responds to Faceless Bastard.
You're wrong.
Hello chaps, I'm the Rip-Off Artist, and around 3 weeks ago, a gal who decided to call herself the Faceless Bastard made a video responding to my video, which in turn was a response to Arthas850, who had no idea what I was talking about. He informed me 50 years ago that a friend of his was going to make a video debunking me, and then for the next 50 years, I had to fucking wait because the responder in question took their sweet time, and at the same time struggled to come up with counter-arguments, and it shows. Given the gal who named herself the Faceless Bastard decided to make the video, and chose to misunderstand what I was saying, as well as making a lot of arguments that fell flat. But with that being said, let's talk about the Faceless Bastard's response video and explain in even more excessive detail, if I haven't already, why she's wrong.
Greetings everyone, I am the Faceless—
Oh fuck, my ears are ringing! Could you have even more of a screechy voice? I would like to imagine this gal looks better than she sounds, but pushes guys away by her insufferable voice. Jesus, maybe you should have had someone else narrate this video.
Bastard. I have been thinking about getting into videos like this for a while.
More like an eternity, because I had to wait so fucking long for this video. You do not make the Rip-Off Artist wait. Ever.
But I wasn't sure where to start. However, my friend Arthas850 brought a video by JJ Plagiarism to my attention. Arthas didn't feel like engaging in a likely long back and forth with JJ.
Yeah, because he gave up immediately. That's not how you win an argument.
But, well, upon viewing the video, I couldn't leave it alone. JJ Plagiarism's a name that he really should have thought about for more than a few seconds, since the joke wears out pretty much after the first video.
It was different than Jar Jar Abrams, so I took it.
Is a YouTuber who seems to only have one topic of discussion. Old Star Wars good! New Star Wars bad! George Lucas is God!
Hello? Hello? Fuck, I can't even hear myself anymore.
I mean, for a guy named JJ Plagiarisms, there doesn't seem to be any content on his channel about JJ Abrams.
I have reviews on The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. Plus, I intend to review his Star Trek movies at a later point. And I reference JJ a lot in my videos. What rock are you living under?
Aside from his Star Wars stuff, really, making fun of JJ Abrams is pretty much the easiest thing in the world. But it's clear that that's not this guy's intent.
True, I have a higher purpose. Because with great anger comes great ridicule.
In actuality, JJ Plagiarism's real intent is to simply deify George Lucas and the Star Wars prequels.
Such an evil thing to do, I'm guessing.
While apparently hating everything else Star Wars related. I don't know. I watched some of his content.
Watch more of it.
And he seems to really love the prequels, but even the OT seems to get flack from him.
I'm pretty sure my Empire Strikes Back is overrated video is the exception rather than the rule. Like, have you ever seen my New Hope review? Because I have the impression that you've only watched my trash-talking vids.
It's actually really hard to find anything he actually does like about Star Wars on a fundamental level.
Plenty, and I hate it when Disney violates it by either doing something incorrectly or by doing something unfaithful.
Regardless, all of this isn't important to why we're here today. JJP created 2 videos that are the focus today. The first video is about why the fans of the Star Wars sequels are not real fans.
Yeah, and let me make it clear before we continue that the video in question was not meant to be taken literally. I named the title the way I did with the intent of baiting as many sequel fans in and then bashing them over the head with the evidence that the sequels are irrefutably terrible. Like, I hear a lot of people say that I treat my opinion as fact, and I agree with that to the extent that I base a lot of my opinions off of research, context, and understanding.
And the second is a response video he made to my friend Arthas850's criticism of his points in that previous video. This guy made an entire video responding to a YouTube comment. I think he's gonna lose his mind when he sees this.
I had a point to prove, and the topic I felt was worthy of its video, given somebody was going to say it sooner or later, plus the comment was long enough to talk about.
Now, his main points that can be summed up thusly: only works in a series by the original creator are authentic. Anything not by the original creator is inauthentic.
Yeah, and let me make it clear that authenticity does not equal quality. I've been trying to save this for my Knights of the Old Republic critique that I've just finished recording. That Knights of the Old Republic may be a better written story than Revenge of the Sith, but that doesn't make it more Star Wars than George Lucas's movies. Also, I should point out that the original creator is open to criticism if they change the meaning of their work, but it does depend on how the retcons are done. Not all retcons are terrible, but most tend to be. For example, George Lucas's original idea for the time span was that the Clone Wars was 35 years before the original Star Wars movie. He changed it to 19 to have the story fit better, but the films didn't directly state how long ago the Clone Wars was, so the retcon was perfectly acceptable. Also, I need to point out that not everything is going to be a part of the story in the first hour of writing.
If something contradicts the original creator, it is heresy. Liking heresy means you're not a real fan!
Yeah, they're fake as fuck, like a plastic fruit.
Now, I could go for each point one by one, but there's something more important here, and that's this concept of authenticity. I can and will make this entire video about the first point, and I will do so with 3 main points of my own that I will helpfully make into their own sections of this video. Section 1. What is authenticity? JJP spends a lot of time talking about authentic versus inauthentic in the 2 videos I'm reacting to, but he doesn't seem to ever be very clear about what that actually means.
In regards to creative works, I define authenticity as meaning only the original creator can truly make a definitive addition to their own work, and everything else made by different people, lacking the authenticity, can surpass the original creator in quality, but it will never be more insert story here than the original creators. The original creator always has a unique mindset when writing a story, and they can only be imitated, not replicated. Because each person is different. A person with a similar worldview or experience still isn't viable to be authentic. The only way you could maybe replicate the intellect is if you cloned the original creator with the same memories. But given that's not possible at the moment, authenticity will always be limited to the creator who creates their own work. This doesn't mean I won't accept good externally made sequels or prequels, because of course I will. But like it or not, they will never be true versions of the original creator's story. Ever. Believe me, if I could pick and choose what I accept as the highest level of canon, I would. But taking authenticity into account, I strive to adhere myself to what is and isn't authentic, and what good and bad fan fictions are.
There's a famous, almost conceptual quote now attributed to Voltaire that is, define your terms. When making an argument, it's generally important to make sure you and your audience are on the same page regarding what is being talked about.
But I do explain myself.
Now, I'm being a bit unfair about this since he does seem to try and explain what he means by authenticity, but, well, his explanations are somewhat vague and often contradict how he uses the term contextually in his argument. Speaking of arguments, it's pretty funny how he keeps claiming no one else makes an actual argument in regards to him, but his own arguments tend to be extremely vague and turn on a dime.
Any examples?
It's also easy to deny any argument if you just pretend that the argument isn't actually an argument. For instance, I could say that literally the entirety of his argument doesn't matter because it's basically all just subjective opinions, so I don't even have to bother responding to it.
I have no clue what you're talking about. I explain myself through and through, what I mean, and why I believe what I do.
It is true, after all. His understanding of what makes something authentic isn't based on any actual logic. Authenticity is not an objective thing, at least when it comes to creative fiction. I mean, not like he actually cares about authenticity anyways.
Because the people in question have no standards, and don't think critically about what Star Wars is versus what it isn't.
It's an excuse to justify not liking something and hating everyone who does like something, because apparently having an opinion different from him is objectively wrong and denies you true access to a fandom space, even though opinions on creative media and fandom are entirely subjective.
Subjective. I just love that word. Luke being written out of character isn't subjective, it's simply a fact. You look at how Luke was written in the original trilogy versus The Last Jedi, and you can see the difference easily. It's not a slight case of it being out of character, like the character talking or acting is slightly off. The whole character is different. But Rian Johnson's cult following argued to the end of the earth that Luke's arc in The Last Jedi was great and symbolic of who Luke is, and other bullshit I couldn't keep track of because they're just delusional. From what we know, George Lucas hates The Last Jedi. Mark Hamill, the man who embodied and played the character and would be required to understand the character in and out, openly questioned Rian Johnson frequently, and his fears were well-founded. Subjective, my ass.
Anyway, back to the point about authenticity and what it means to JJP. In his response to Arthas, he says that anything not made by the original creator is merely fanfiction. In this context, the subject being that all of the Batman's existence post Bob Kane's death is merely fanfiction by definition.
Not post his death, post him writing. And I'm pretty sure that I explained that comics have so many different continuities and writers, goddammit.
Which, okay, that's fair. But that's not failing to consider nuance like he claimed Arthas' mistake was, but okay. Later, while still talking about Batman, he implies that actually something is authentic if he respects the original version.
I implied nothing. What are you talking about?
So, things can be authentic, if not by the original creator, but if respectful of the creator's vision? Is all of Batman post-Bob Kane fanfiction then? Can you be straight here?
Can you be straight and give me a quote?
You said that everything not created by the creator is inauthentic, but then also said if something respects the original vision, that it is authentic.
No, I didn't. Stop lying. I've watched my video about authenticity a million times, and I haven't seen anything where I feel I misspoke at best.
Or at least you implied as much, unless you're saying that Terminator 3 and Salvation aren't authentic, they're just good fanfiction, which is what I assumed at first, before you seemed to suddenly change your mind and said that a new creator can continue an original creator's vision, which implies it can be authentic.
Based on what you're saying here, I'm assuming you're talking about what I discussed when I said continuing a work is allowed, but it will never be authentic, but again, I'm not sure. Since you're just blabbering on and claiming I contradicted myself with no context.
Again, you're annoyingly vague about this in the part where you're trying to explain it. Next, we have a conversation about Stephen King's The Shining versus Stanley Kubrick's film on the version of The Shining, in which JJP seems to firstly imply he knows the motivations of Stanley Kubrick, then implies there's nothing wrong with the Kubrick version because it's a different continuity, which... show me where it says exactly in the film?
Right here in the film itself. Says based upon the book by Stephen King. Based on the book. It does not say it is the book by Stephen King, which would mean Kubrick is overriding it.
Anyway, so moving on. So, we now have that inauthenticity is only actually bad if it claims to be a successor to the original, because doing so invalidates the original story.
Yeah, if it fucks up continuity, the meaning of the story, and shits all over what happens in the original.
Which he implied that the Kubrick film being in a different continuity made it fine because it didn't invalidate the original story. So one can only assume invalidating the original story is part of what makes something inauthentic?
Yeesh, you are not listening, are you? It's like you are immune to hearing and processing specific words I say, and thus you miss them. Are you a computer? Because that's what it seems like.
Also, on a slightly petty side note, I need to address something before we move on. It's understandable that you would mispronounce Arthas' name, since it's essentially the original name he created, but I refuse to believe you have never heard Stephen King's name properly pronounced.
I had trouble with Stephen and Stephen in general. It's not exclusive to King.
You have now. Also, you realize the Star Wars sequels don't invalidate the original Star Wars movies, right? That's not how time works. A sequel can't invalidate a previous work.
Well, I heavily disagree with that. There's so much shit the sequels invalidate and change. For example, the Emperor coming back. He died. But worse than that, his death was used to rip away Luke and Anakin's achievements because the sequels in of themselves make the triumphs of the heroes meaningless. Han went back to being a smuggler, undoing his development, Leia became Leia Poppins, and Luke became a dirty, pathetic homeless man who rejected his greatest triumphs. Also, lines like dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew, directly contradict the prequels, so it's clear the sequels were trying to override their original saga. There is no way you can tell me cloning being a secret only the Sith knew is not a direct retcon that overwrites Attack of the Clones, because now Attack of the Clones is invalidated due to conflicting information. Only the Sith knew cloning, so either the Kaminoans were Sith, or the Kaminoans didn't make the clones. Which makes no sense because Dexter Jetsa referred to them as cloners, and it becomes a rabbit hole of contradictions.
I mean, the Star Wars prequels can invalidate an original work by changing aspects of the setting, which now canonically change the continuity of the later stories. For instance, midichlorians are now just how the Force works canonically in all the movies because it was established to be a fact in the prequels, making it therefore retroactively standard knowledge during the time of the original trilogy as well.
Midichlorians are the worst example you could have used. The original trilogy was vague on how the Force worked exactly, but so many stupid OT purists thought the original trilogy said all there was to know about the Force, but I mean, there were obviously still questions like how someone is Force sensitive, what does the Force feel like, etc. It's clear that random Stormtrooper number 35 could not just tap into the Force and use it by believing, which is what J.J. Abrams believed, thus why he just had Rey with a skewed incorrect perception of how the Force works, pulling stuff without training, which makes everything surrounding the Force in the original saga invalidated, because The Force Awakens onwards is changing the rules, and you have to disregard what happened in the original trilogy, and more so, how it happened.
The special editions also quite literally invalidate the original trilogy by not only changing aspects of them, but also making access to the original versions more difficult.
The special editions are the original trilogy. The original creator, George Lucas, has stated that it is what he always wanted the films to be, but simply couldn't due to budget or corporate interference or some other reasons. The original cuts of the original trilogy are less authentic than the special edition re-releases.
On that same token, though, the sequels don't invalidate anything in the original series, because anything that happened in them can't retroactively change anything from the original series or the prequels because it all happened later chronologically.
This is so stupid. You're seriously not going to tell me that all that I've laid forth previously is not proof of invalidation?
You can simply ignore them and re-watch the originals and nothing changes. Anyway, so now we have a better understanding of authenticity.
No, we don't. You are trying to misinform your audience.
Something is authentic if that was created by the original creator, or by someone who respected the vision of the original creator, or doesn't invalidate the original. Alright, we figured out what authenticity means.
Why'd you need to figure it out if I already explained it?
Now we can move on to pointing out why authenticity is stupid. Section 2. The single creator fallacy. JJP has one obvious and hilariously overdone bias that is, George Lucas created Star Wars and is apparently an infallible god.
Given your lack of understanding so far, yep.
Now, despite what JJP will say, because he said this a lot and it's his standard response to criticism, I do not hate George Lucas. I actually quite like George Lucas. He seems like a really cool guy. I'd love to meet him for a drink sometime, though I can't drink alcohol or I will die.
Oh, that explains the screechy voice. You're underage and haven't got the pubes yet.
So it would probably have to be non-alcoholic drinks. I also like him for more than just Star Wars even. Do you ever see Willow, JJP? Have you? What about THX1138?
Yeah, I've seen THX and American Graffiti. I haven't seen Willow yet, but that's on my to-do list. I have reviews for THX and American Graffiti planned later down the line.
Did you know that THX was an actual movie and not just the name of a company? Willow is a great movie and it deserves more attention in the point I'm making. But anyway, I digress. I do that a lot. It's almost like if you let someone create something without any oversight, you get all of their weaknesses as well as your strengths or something. It's almost like creating something is a collaborative effort? Wait! Is that my point? Oh my god, it is!
Yikes, the volume's gone up.
George Lucas did not create Star Wars! A group of various writers, actors, input, and directors made Star Wars!
Yeah, with George's supervision and approval. Saved in the edit is bullshit.
George Lucas did create Star Wars, but he didn't create Star Wars. Star Wars was created by a combination of writers. George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, and Lee Brackett.
Yeah, I don't know about that, lass.
And directors. George Lucas, Irvin Kershner, and Richard Marquand.
Lucas was still the top guy. Irvin Kershner and Richard Marquand commanded the set, but George still had the final say. Context.
So in regards to the concept of authenticity as laid out by JJP, we have a big and obvious problem.
Yeah, it's that there is no problem.
How do you decide who the original creator of something is? Is there even such a thing as an original creator? There's a simple and a complex version of this problem, and we'll start with the simple. Let's talk about Batman again. I actually spoke to Arthas about his question regarding Batman, because JJP actually pointed out something interesting in his response. Arthas did not mention Bill Finger, and I was actually curious why. It turns out he wasn't aware of Bill Finger, and I educated him on how Bob Kane stole all of the credit and only admitted as much shortly before his death and long after Bill Finger's own death. However, in a sense, JJP is lucky Arthas wasn't aware of Bill Finger because it raises a problem in JJP's understanding of authenticity. I want JJP to answer this question for me. Who created Batman?
Bob Kane and Bill Finger is the short answer, and the long answer based on my understanding of the creation of Batman is more complicated. Bob Kane first conceptualized and drew Batman, and Bill Finger shaped Batman through rewrites.
Was it Bob Kane? Was it Bill Finger? Or was it both? Regardless of which answer you choose, there's a problem. If Bob Kane created it, then none of Batman is actually authentic, since everything about the design of the character wasn't his creation. If Bill Finger was the creator, then Bob Kane didn't create anything, and so the Batman stories credited to him are arguably inauthentic as well. If you consider both the creator then, well, what counts as authentic after Bill Finger's death?
I'm pretty sure by that point, Batman would have been rebooted a couple of times, and both writers would have ceased working on Batman before their deaths. And based on my research, yeah. It becomes a complicated answer because Bill Finger wrote the characters and Bob Kane drew them. So in a way, it's sort of like mostly Bill Finger is the writer of Batman. The answer I think isn't very black and white, but I named my video Nuances of Authenticity. It's not black and white all the time. I mean, people are still debating about this topic, so we haven't even reached a proper answer yet.
If only one creator makes something, is it still authentic or does it need to be both? Of course your decision there casts some issues on your understanding of Star Wars authenticity, because as you may or may not be aware, George Lucas's original idea for Star Wars was quite a bit different from the eventual product, and as such can't logically be said that he alone created Star Wars, unless literally all of the movies which stray from his original vision are inauthentic.
I hear this a lot. Have you ever considered budget, corporate interference, and the special editions?
The more complex version of the problem is, well, the metaphysical one. A person, as an individual concept, does not exist. Humans are an entity forged by their experiences, and any creative endeavor of a person will be based on the person that they are, created by all these people. In that sense, I'm willing to allow you to deny this idea out of hand because it's metaphysical and I just felt like adding it for fun. All of human society in history created everything as opposed to any one person, or even a small group of people creating anything.
We're still talking about art here, right?
Also, JJP, your thoughts on Batman 2 make me wonder about your opinion on something else in terms of authenticity. Who made the Cthulhu mythos and what parts of it are authentic? Obviously Lovecraft created the setting and some of the principal characters, but collaborating writers such as August Derleth and turned it into an actual mythos. Also on the concept of mythoi, who created the Greek and Norse mythology? If the actual creators of these stories are lost to history and everything about them is oral traditions changed and adapted down through history, how does one judge the authenticity of any of that?
You can't. Mythology was made by presumably thousands of people without a simple origin point. Given we know who made Star Wars originally, I don't know what this mythology shit has to do with work completely different. Also, I looked it up, and we actually do have more context for who made the Greek mythology than just, we don't know. We've got champs like Homer and Hesiod. I can't judge who made Greek mythology and what's authentic, but mythology is different given it shapes culture and a religion to a degree Star Wars never will. Context. Mythology isn't just what people read, heard, or experienced. Mythology is part of their religion and stuff. So, mythology is a false equivalence. I don't know what you're trying to say. Mythology to me seems like a cheap shot when you fail to understand what mythology is and how it differs from stories like Star Wars.
Anyway, the point is, of course, nothing, or at least very little in the reality has a single original creator, and so deciphering authenticity based on your criteria is basically stupid, and is either entirely subjective or impossible. Which now brings me to Section 3. None of this fucking matters at all. Authenticity is a stupid and pointless concept, and JJP actually doesn't give a shit about authenticity, because no one actually does.
I've met so many people who do. I know a guy who disagreed with the sequel trilogy on the mere fact that it was George Lucas's story and would never be authentic. So why were they trying to make a sequel?
So, this is the actual point of this video. Everything up until now has just been playing around and having some fun, poking at JJP and being antagonizing because, like my name states, I'm a bastard.
Damn straight you're a bastard, but further than that, you don't know what I'm talking about.
But here's the deal. None of this matters. Authenticity doesn't matter. We're talking about fictional media, creative works, everything about them is subjective, nothing matters. You, JJP, are just a person who does not like a piece of media, and that's absolutely fine.
Way to downplay the betrayal of George Lucas, the butchering of Star Wars, and the woke agenda Disney has to pander to those who didn't actually like Star Wars to begin with.
There's plenty of media I don't like. The problem, though, is you are, for some reason, very, very mad that other people like a thing and you don't.
I wonder why.
So, you tell them they're wrong and act like there's some justifiable, objective reason to dislike it, and this is the reason it also gives you the right to try and gatekeep. The little round peg you found was this joke of a concept and you call authenticity. It changes meaning on a dime, because it doesn't mean anything except whatever suits you best at the moment. You aren't a critic, you're just a hater, and you disguise your subjective opinions behind anything you can use and try to justify your opinions as being right.
Well, I mean, I do use evidence to back up my points.
I can say now that Star Wars is actually at its core a story about two people learning to love again, and that statement, as ridiculous as it is as true and authentic in regards to Star Wars as was any of the movies, books, shows, or video games. Now, let me add, Disney sucks. Whether or not the sequels are bad doesn't change that. What they did to George Lucas also sucks.
And you still don't truly understand where the hate comes from. Because people, mostly sequel fans, actively lie, downplay or reject facts such as the expanded universe never being canon, using quotes from George without realizing that George wouldn't consider the sequels canon either, and then using the excuse that George Lucas sold the rights, as if that means anything.
That doesn't change the quality or authenticity of the sequels, and you know that.
The opposite, I know, actually, that authenticity does mean something, and that the sequels piss all over George's work, while disguising itself as a legitimate sequel to his work.
It doesn't matter anyways, because once again, them being authentic doesn't matter. What matters is they make money for Disney, because that's the only tangible aspect about Star Wars. How much money it makes.
Oh yeah, it was always about money. Bitch, Star Wars wouldn't be popular to begin with if it failed to speak to people. Shut the hell up.
Did you know Star Wars was pretty much the first movie to ever actually focus on merchandise? It made George Lucas a killing because he gave away a lot of his financial rights to the movie in return for profits from the merchandise, and Star Wars sold gangbusters. The prequels did very well as well, and were even more heavily merchandised, and you know what? I hate the prequels. And
yeah, you hate the prequels. That's why your argument is very skewed. Because you don't understand fucking Star Wars. Because every single person who hates the prequels is either a fool who is riffing off others, or doesn't understand Star Wars to begin with.
Honestly, I see you say that you want an actual debate on why people think the prequels are bad, so I'd be glad to engage with you on that in the future. But for the moment, my opinion doesn't matter because that they made a ton of money and that's all that ever really matters. Last thing I'll say to you on the subject is, Star Wars is fiction. You really need to stop being such a dick about it and let people enjoy things. Stop getting mad about a fictional story and go play outside or something.
Yeah, it's just a movie argument. You literally mentioned the betrayal of George Lucas, but failed to realize why I'm making such a big deal out of this. I'm really not that pissy about Spider-Man No Way Home, for example, because neither Sam Raimi or Mark Webb were betrayed. It's just that their work fell into bad hands in many ways, which does matter, but it's nowhere near as bad as George, who was lied to and tricked into selling the rights, and then ignorant shills defending everything the traders made. I've said commonly, I wouldn't respect the sequels even if I liked them. But they're impossible to like unless you're fucking woke. A lot of people deny that they care about the political messages of the sequels, and they're lying. Otherwise you'd understand why people hate the sequels, because they don't want these political messages. And that's the end of the video. Gee, I went into rant mode, didn't I? I fully expect a retort from this gal, so until that happens, I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?